بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Cestodes, this is your second lecture or your
أنا آسف. معلش اسم حضرتك والرقم كام المحاضرة؟
رقم كام في المحاضرة؟ هتبقى رقم 3.
رقم المحاضرة رقم 3.
اه
تمام. اسم حضرتك؟
دكتورة إيمان دري.
إيمان دكتور.
أنا كاتبة اسمي هنا.
هنبتدي بس من الأول تاني.
alright ماشي. أقول لهم نتيجة الثيرد، أقول لهم الثيرد ليكتشر ولا مش شرط؟
لا عادي.
طب أوكي ماشي.
أنا اسف في نص الزرار. أنا آسف.
لا قول. يلا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. This is the lecture about general introduction to Cestodes. I'm Dr. Iman Durri Kirdani, Professor of Medical Parasitology. You already have the first class of platyhelminthes, which is trematodes, and now we will follow the rest of platyhelminthes, which are cestodes. Cestodes generally are not formed of one part or one segment only. The body became elongated, flat, ribbon-like, and with multiple segments. The body is not represented only in one segment. However, the body became elongated and divided into many segments. So platyhelminthes are divided to trematodes, and you already have it, and cestodes, which we will start it by now. Generally, the general morphology of cestodes, as we said, the body is divided into segments or bloglotets. Segments could be also called proglotets. And the group of segments as a whole is called strobella, all right? In cestode, as in trematode, there is no body cavity, and there is no gut, no intestinal ceca, and this is a main difference between trematodes and cestode, all right? Each segment has both male and female reproductive organ, as in trematode. Also trematode, the one segment contains both male and female reproductive organs. And so it is called hermaphrodite, and they reproduce sexually. The male and female secretion could be transferred from one segment to another segment to fertilize the ova, all right? The body is covered with a tegument. The tegument is a specialized form of cuticle which is able to absorb and protect the worm, not only for protection as in trematodes, but it is also able to absorb nutrition from the surrounding medium. This is a big difference, as in trematodes there is an intestinal ceca and a mouth opening through which the nutrition can be transferred inside the body. However, in cestode, there is no mouth opening and no intestinal ceca. So the nutritions are transferred from outside to inside the body through the active teguments. Also, the body is divided, as we said, to certain partitions. The first one, in the anterior end of the worm, there is what's called scolex. This scolex followed by unsegmented portion, which is called neck. After the neck, there are a lot of segments. Such segments maybe few in number in some worms and large in number or many in number in other worms. So the body is divided into scolex, neck, and segments, which are called proglottids. To deal more in such partition, we will describe the scolex or scoleces. The plural of scolex is scoleces. The first or the anterior end of the worm is provided with the holdfast organs or organs of attachments. The organs of attachments may be in a form of pothria. The singular is bothrium. These pothria are grooves along the sides of the scolex, which act by a vacuum action to hold the worm fixed in the mucous membrane of the small intestine. This is a type of the holdfast organs. Another types, another worms are provided with suckers and only suckers or suckers plus rostellum. Right? This rostellum is a projection in the most anterior end of the worm, and such rostellum is provided with row or rows of hooks. These hooks will grab to the mucous membrane of the small intestine and attach the worm firmly to the mucous membrane. The suckers act by sucking action to make the worm fixed in the mucous membrane. All right? The scolex is followed by neck. The neck is a highly active part of the worm. The neck from which new proglottids are provided or are new proglottids develops from such tiny segments below the scolex is a very active reproductive part from which new proglottids always and continuously produced to elongate the worm. The segments which are following the necks are the segments nearby the neck are called immature segments, as the reproductive organs inside such segments are not well developed yet. However, after the mature segments, after the immature segments, there will be mature segments which contains a well-developed reproductive organs. And by the end of the worms, the group of worms in the posterior end of the worm are called gravid segments, and this part of the segments contain the uterus, which is fully accumulated with eggs, fertilized eggs. So the immature segments are the newly developed segment nearby the scolex. Mature segments are the well-developed segments with reproductive organs, and the gravid segments nearby the posterior end of the worm, and they are occupied by the gravid segments, by the gravid uterus, sorry. Here is to show a draw or figure to show the reproductive organs. The reproductive organs are formed of male reproductive organs in a form of follicles distributed in the lateral segments or the lateral aspects of each segment. The vitelline glands, the female reproductive organs with ovary, and uterus, a blind uterus. This is in the mature segments, okay? Here the vitelline glands and the two lobules of ovary in the middle of the segment there is the blind uterus, and laterally there is the genital pore or genital opening. Many segments, or most of the segments, have only one set of reproductive organs. That's to say, one set of male reproductive organs and one set of female reproductive organs. However, in some worms, the one segment is provided with double set of reproductive organs, and by this way there will be double genital pores in both lateral sides of the segment. The gravid segments are larger than the mature segments, and the blind uterus in the gravid segment either stuck or full with fertilized ova, fertilized eggs. And so, for this reason, the segments enlarged, become elongated to make space for the developed uterus inside it. And this is the form of the gravid segments with the uterus full with eggs. Here is also another drawing to simplify the morphology of cestodes, scolex with suckers and rostellum provided with hooks, followed by a short segment which is called a neck, from which newly developed organs developed, or new segments developed. After the immature segments, there will be the mature segment, the sexually mature reproductive segment, or organs inside the segments with vitelline organs and uterus, vitelline glands, and two ovary with blind uterus, and the follicles of testes are in the lateral aspects of the segments with lateral genital pore, from which the sperms of the same segment from the follicles of the testes or from another segment will enter through the genital pore to fertilize the ova or eggs produced by the ovary of the female, and such fertilized eggs will be stored inside the uterus. All right. After a bunch or group of mature segments, by the end of the worm, there are the gravid segments, as we said, with uterus full with eggs inside it. Let's start with the life cycle of cestodes. Okay, you have to remember the life cycle of trematodes, and you have to differentiate between the two life cycles, the general life cycle. These points are broad general points about the important points in the life cycle of cestodes. Okay, in the life cycle of cestode, we have to start with the habitat. Each worm, you have to know where the adult stage inside the human body is present or located, or the habitat of the adult worm in the body of the definitive host. This is the habitat. The habitat of all cestodes, is the small intestine of their definitive host, either man or animal. We don't know. Some cestodes are cestodes for animals, as Echinococcus granulosus, as you will have in hydatid disease. However, the adult cestodes infecting man are in the small intestine of man. Okay? The definitive host, of course, you already have in the first lecture of introduction what are the meanings of habitat, of definitive host, of intermediate host. So you have to revise the first lecture before starting dealing with the following ones. Definitive host in all cestodes may be man or animals, all right? Intermediate host is the host in which the larval stage or the immature stage is present, and it is important to complete the life cycle of such worm. Each cestode needs an intermediate host to complete the life cycle, in which the larval stage will develop inside this intermediate host. However, one only cestode can use the definitive host as post-definitive and intermediate host. And this is Hymenolebis nana. You will have it in the infectious disease too, inshallah. Intermediate host, they required one or two intermediate hosts. Some cestodes need not only one intermediate host, but it has two larval stages, so it needs two intermediate hosts. They required one or two intermediate hosts, usually animals or arthropods, with the exception of what, as we said, Hymenolebis nana. It needs only one host, or it can use only one host to complete the life cycle by all its stages. What is the diagnostic stage? The diagnostic stage in cestode is the stage by which I can diagnose infection with this worm. So the diagnostic stage in cestodes is, in all cestodes, are the eggs. All cestodes produce eggs. They are present in the small intestine and produce eggs, all right? As in trematodes. Such eggs will pass with the stool to the soil. So as they pass with the stool, so I can catch or diagnose the infection by detection such eggs in the stool of the patients, all right? The eggs of all cestodes are, you have to remember, such fixed three characters of all cestodes. They are rounded, they are mature, and they are small in size, from 30 to 40 micron. These are the three fixed features of all eggs of cestodes. So how I can differentiate between different eggs? By the external shell or by the egg shell. It is hard, thick, striated shell or membranous shell, all right? In each worm you will know the specific character of its egg. So all cestodes produce eggs. In most cestode, eggs are mature, as we said, and they pass with the stool to the soil. In some cestodes, all the gravate segments by the end of the worm can be detached from the mother worm and pass with the stool. So I can use, or I can see the eggs or the gravate segments. In some cestodes, the diagnostic stage mainly eggs, and in some cestodes I can see in the stool. The mother can tell the physician or the doctor that that her child passed white objects in the stool. These white objects may be the gravate segments of the cestode. The embryo inside the egg is called hexacanthus embryo. We said that all eggs pass with the stool as immature. So the embryo inside is not called miracidium as in trematodes. You have to remember. The egg inside, the embryo inside the eggs are called hexacanthus embryo. And hexa, you know that it means 6, as the embryo is provided with three pairs of hooks. Such hooks will help the embryo after hatching to penetrate the tissues of the intermediate host. All right? hexacanthus embryo or oncosphere. It is a rounded embryo, all right? So we will have a general look about the life cycle of all cestodes, and we said that all cestodes are in the small intestine of its definitive host. The eggs pass with the stool, so eggs are called what? Diagnostic stage. The eggs will pass to where? To where? To the soil, not as to water as in trematodes. You have to know that the eggs of trematodes must pass to water to complete the life cycle. As the eggs search for what? Search for the snail, and the snails are in the water. However, in cestodes, eggs must pass to the soil, and in the soil it will be dormant until it will be ingested by the intermediate host. So the intermediate host, as we said, may be an insect or maybe an animal, all right? So in the small intestine of the intermediate host, the eggs will hatch, the oncosphere or the hexacanthus embryo will be liberated, penetrate the wall of the intestine, and go by the blood stream to be distributed to the body of the intermediate host. And inside the body of the intermediate host, it will metamorphose, change in the morphology, develop to what stage? To what's called cystic larval stage. The larval stage of cestodes is called cystic larval stage, as it is formed of a vesicle, one vesicle or more than one vesicle, such vesicle containing a fluid, and inside the fluid a new scolesis or a new scolex will develop. So it is why it is called cystic, as it is in a form of a vesicle, a membrane surrounding fluid, and inside this fluid a protected newly developed scolex is developing inside, all right? In the tissues of the intermediate host, the larval stage will be dormant until it will be consumed by the definitive host. The larval stages inside in the intermediate host, mainly in the tissues, in the meat of cattle, in the beef, in pork, all right, according to the intermediate host. And in such case, such a cystic larval stage will be called what? The infective stage. Okay? So the infective stage in cestode is a cystic larval stage. Each worm has its specific cystic larval stage, either with one scolex, with more than one scolex, okay? However, they are a cystic structure, a vesicular structure. By ingestion, the meat or tissues of the intermediate host containing the larval stage, such larval stage in the body of the definitive host will change to the adult stage within days, okay? So let's revise the life cycle once more. Eggs pass with the stool. Eggs are considered the diagnostic stage. Eggs will pass to the soil. In the soil, such eggs will ingest by the intermediate host, where they hatch in the intestine, liberating the oncosphere, and by the bloodstream in the tissues of this intermediate host, the oncosphere will be transferred to various organs, skeletal muscles, brain, skin, cardiac muscle even, all right? And in such organs, cystic larval stage will develop in the tissues of the intermediate host. And such cystic larval stage is called the infective stage. Infection is carried out by ingestion of the tissues containing the larval stage. Man or animal ingests the larva, the larval stage or the cystic larval stage, which develop in the which will later on develop in the tissues of the definitive host. The larval stage, we said, is a cystic stage or cystic structure. However, the small cystic structure is called cysticercoid. Okay? There are different names for the cystic stage. Maybe cysticercus, when it is large enough to be seen by the naked eye, containing one scolex only in the cystic structure, surrounded by a membrane, protected with a fluid, and contain one single scolex, which will later on develop to a new worm in the tissues of the definitive host. Or maybe smaller in size, and in such case it is called cysticercoid larval stage with only one scolex, as in Hymenolipus nana. Or it may another type of cystic structure which is called a hydatid cyst, and this hydatid cyst is surrounded with many layers and contains many scoleces. All right, so these are the different types of the cystic larval stage of cestodes. As we said once more time, mode of infection by ingestion of the larval stage. When these larval stages are ingested by the definitive hosts, they developed into adult worms in the small intestine of the definitive host. You have to remember, and this slide is generally adapted to all protozoa, to all helminthes, to all types or parasites in parasitology. You have in each worm or in each protozoa, you have to define such 6 points. The definitive host, you have to know what is the definitive host. It is man or animal, as some worms are not adapted to develop in the body of man. So they are, the definitive host in such case will be animals, and the man will act as intermediate host may, all right, or accidental host, right? So in each parasite, you have to define, to know the definitive host, to know where the adult stage is present inside this definitive host, in the small intestine, in the brain, in the large intestine, in the skeletal muscles, in bloodstream, all right? And how to diagnose such infection. So I have to know the diagnostic stage: eggs, larva, cyst, okay? The route of exit, such diagnostic stage, will pass outside my body, outside the body of the definitive host, through what? Through the blood, through the skin, through the urine, through stool. Okay, I have to know from where such diagnostic stage will pass, and to where, to soil, to water, will be ingested, will be sucked by an insect. Okay, and what is the infective stage? After it will pass to the outside, it will be taken by an intermediate host. Here is a point must be added. The intermediate host, is such worm need an intermediate host or not? It leads a direct life cycle or indirect life cycle. You know the definition of direct and indirect life cycle, right? And the infective stage, eggs. larva, auto-infection, okay? Auto-infection, and the mode of infection. The mode of infection the mode of infection must include the route of entry. It will by ingestion, by injection, right? May be by inhalation, okay? By sucking blood arthropods, okay? And the infective stage, and in what? This infective stage will be transmitted to me through what? Through ingestion of what? Of meat, of water, playing in soil, by myself in auto-infection. So these 3 points must be written in each question about what is the mode of infection. I have to read in your answer that you write the route of entry, the infective stage, and in what? In meat, in water, in vegetables, in fish, okay? These are the 3 important points, and this all about introduction to cestodes. All such points will be discussed in details with each worm, inshallah, when you have it in infectious disease 2. Thank you.